10 years ago, millions of people in Britain cast a vote with one goal in mind: take back control of the borders, bring immigration down. That was the promise, and for a lot of people, it was the entire point. But here's the number that should stop you cold. In the years right after that vote, immigration into Britain didn't fall. It exploded to the highest levels ever recorded in the country's history. So what actually happened? Did the government simply lie? Or is the real story far stranger than a broken promise? To understand this, you have to separate two things people often confuse. Population growth and immigration aren't automatically the same thing. A country's population can grow because more babies are born or because more people move in from elsewhere. In Britain's case, birth rates have actually been falling for years. Fewer children are being born now than at almost any point in modern British history. So if the population is still rising and rising fast, the only place that growth can be coming from is migration. And it is rising fast. From the 1970s through the turn of the millennium, Britain's population grew at a slow, steady crawl, averaging less than 0.1% a year. Since 2001, that pace has more than tripled. In recent years, growth has pushed past 1% annually, of a level not seen since the years right after the Second World War. Does that sound like a country that successfully closed its borders? It doesn't. So here's the twist. Brexit wasn't a lie. It just didn't do what most voters assumed it would do. Before Brexit, immigration policy in Britain was split in two. Citizens of the European Union could move to the UK freely, no visa required, no application, no waiting. Everyone else from outside the EU had to go through a separate, often stricter system. When Britain left the EU, that split ended. In 2021, the government introduced a single points-based system that judged EU and non-EU citizens by the exact same criteria for the first time in the country's history. Here's what almost nobody expected. For EU citizens specifically, this actually worked exactly as intended. Since the Brexit vote, EU immigration to Britain has consistently fallen, and starting in 2022, more EU citizens have been leaving the country than arriving. If the story stopped there, Brexit would have delivered on its promise. But EU citizens were the exception, not the rule. Because once the government had full control over its own immigration rules for the first time in decades, it used that control to open new doors, not close them. And it did this for reasons that had almost nothing to do with politics and almost everything to do with economics. Let's start with universities. Higher education is one of Britain's largest exports, and international demand for British degrees is enormous. But UK universities were also facing a serious financial squeeze. Domestic tuition fees are capped by law at just over £9,000 a year, a price that hasn't kept pace with rising costs. International students, however, aren't covered by that cap. They can be charged significantly more. So when university budgets came under pressure, expanding international recruitment became the obvious fix. At the peak, international student arrivals hit nearly 500,000 people in a single year, an 80% jump compared to before the new visa system existed. Then there's labor. Britain's population is aging, and healthcare and social care were already under severe strain before other pressures made things worse. The government responded by loosening the rules, and for the first time, care workers themselves became eligible for a dedicated visa. Within a single year, the number of health and care visas issued nearly tripled. Construction, farming, and retail all reported record numbers of unfilled vacancies around the same time. And in farming specifically, tens of millions of pounds worth of fruit and vegetables were left to rot in the fields simply because there weren't enough hands to pick them. Add in a handful of humanitarian responses, people fleeing political crackdowns, war, and instability abroad, and you get the full picture. By 2023, net migration into Britain hit its highest level ever recorded. Nearly 1 million people in a single year. Here's the modern mirror moment, the part that should genuinely make you rethink the whole story. You'd assume a country facing serious labor shortages simply ran out of available workers. Like the cupboard was bare and someone had to place a rush order. But Britain has over 1 million young people between 16 and 24 who are not in work, education, or training. Britain's own version of an idle generation, sitting right alongside industries desperate for staff. This isn't a story about too few workers. It's a story about a mismatch, a labor market failing to connect people who need opportunities with sectors that need people. Why does that mismatch exist? Partly because these jobs, farm work, care work, construction, hospitality, are physically demanding, often low-paid, and carry limited paths for career advancement. For someone born in a wealthier country with other options on the table, those jobs simply aren't attractive enough to pursue. But for someone coming from a country with a far lower cost of living, the math looks completely different. A seasonal farm worker from a country like Kyrgyzstan can earn, in roughly 6 months of hard labor in the UK, the equivalent of 6 years of local wages back home. That's not a small incentive. That's a life-changing one. Economists call this wage arbitrage, and it explains why international recruitment is often faster and easier than the slow, difficult work of training and mobilizing a country's own idle workforce. Britain's own Office for Budget Responsibility has found that, on average, migrants pay more in tax than they draw in public services, making immigration a net financial positive in the short term. But relying on that solution comes with a quieter cost. It reduces the pressure to fix the underlying problem. It's treating chronic pain with painkillers instead of treating the injury. It works, right up until the supply of painkillers runs out. And there's a second, stranger thread running through this same story, one most immigration debates never mention. At the same time low-wage workers were arriving in record numbers, a very different group was reportedly leaving. Wealthy entrepreneurs, investors, and high earners, driven out by rising taxes on investment income and the end of a long-standing tax break for international residents. Headlines warned of a millionaire exodus, with one widely cited report from the wealth research firm New World Wealth projecting that Britain would lose over 16,000 millionaires in a single year, taking tens of billions of dollars in wealth with them. Here's where the story gets genuinely murky. That same data has faced serious criticism from independent researchers for weak methodology, and it comes from an organization that profits from helping wealthy people relocate in the first place. Meanwhile, London still ranks among the top handful of technology hubs on Earth, still attracts massive venture capital, and more than half of Britain's fastest-growing companies were founded by people born outside the country. If a genuine, large-scale wealth exodus were happening, that ecosystem probably wouldn't be thriving quite this visibly. So what's actually true? Probably somewhere in the middle. Some wealthy people are leaving. It's just far less dramatic than the loudest headlines suggest. What we do know for certain is this. Britain's immigration numbers have since collapsed just as sharply as they rose, falling from nearly 1 million people in 2023 to under 200,000 within just a couple of years, as tighter rules took hold. Some economic models suggest this sharp reversal could leave Britain's economy several percentage points smaller by the end of the next decade. Not catastrophic, but not nothing either. So the next time you hear a country debate immigration purely in terms of borders and identity, remember Britain's story. Underneath the politics was a quieter, colder economic engine. Universities patching budget gaps, hospitals patching staffing gaps, farms patching labor gaps, all using the same tool. And a harder, slower work, training 1 million idle young people, raising wages in unattractive sectors, fixing what was actually broken, kept getting pushed a little further down the road. 10 years ago, people voted to close a door. What actually happened was the country quietly opened several new ones for reasons that had far less to do with borders and far more to do with balancing the books.